Steve Martin tells you, which 9 actors are really bad? Steve Martin is a unique member of the Hollywood comedy stars. Martin is not as improvisational as many of his colleagues. He is renowned for his nearly architectural approach to comedy, his painstaking approach to humor, and his meticulously constructed characters. Every stop, movement, and word choice has a purpose. According to a long-standing collaborator who has worked with Martin on multiple projects, Steve doesn't just tell jokes, he engineers them. His approach to humor is analogous to that of a skilled watchmaker. From his wild and crazy days to his more mature jobs as an actor, writer, and singer, Martin has been one of America's most enduringly humorous voices. However, his obsession with perfection has caused him to clash with experts and comedians who have quite different perspectives on how to be funny and talented than he does. According to a close acquaintance, Steve doesn't publicly criticize other musicians. Don't get it wrong. He sees and remembers everything, even if that's not his style. He will never associate with someone again if they interfere with his work or treat others badly. He recalls misbehavior like if it were yesterday. Throughout his decades-long career, Martin is rumored to have personally disapproved of 9 musicians, which we examine tonight. Martin's methodical, courteous style is completely at odds with these actors' approaches to humor and professionalism. 1. There have been accusations that Steve Martin and Chevy Chase's egos caused tension during the 1986 filming of Three Amigos. Due to their radically divergent approaches to comedy and professional relationships, what could have been a fantastic comic collaboration swiftly devolved into a nightmare. According to someone who worked on the film, it was like seeing 2 different species try to talk to each other. Steve learned every line by heart and would arrive prepared to work with others. When Chevy would arrive, his ideas about how situations should be written were not usually the same as what was recorded. Many claim that Chase's actions went beyond disagreements over creativity and into areas that Martin found quite concerning. People claim that Chase occasionally sacrificed his co-stars in order to rewrite dialogue to give himself better lines. Additionally, they claim that Chase's rudeness toward crew workers irritated Martin, who is usually courteous. Steve firmly believes that movies are collaborative works where everyone deserves respect, stated a producer who has collaborated with Martin on multiple films. Chevy believed that everyone was there to make him appear good, but this was not the case. One especially difficult day of filming is alleged to have been the pinnacle of this conceptual dispute. When Chase allegedly requested multiple changes to the script that prioritized his character over the others, Martin was overheard telling director John Landis, if ego was money, Chevy could buy Wall Street. Martin was irritated not only by Chase's selfishness, but also by the way it affected everyone else. Steve once told me that great comedians make everyone in a scene better. The director who collaborated with Martin after Three Amigos believed Chevy had made a mistake. It was crucial to him to intentionally take away other artists' opportunities in order to gain more recognition for himself. Both men were courteous and professional at the film's publicity appearances. But according to industry insiders, Martin never collaborated with Chase again, which was typical of men who strayed beyond their professional boundaries. 2. Jim Carrey, the human hurricane. The alleged conflict between Steve Martin and Jim Carrey is a union of 2 very dissimilar approaches to humor. Jim Carrey's wild, spontaneous energy contrasts sharply with Martin's well-timed humor. According to some, this disparity boiled over during an awards ceremony in the middle of the 1990s. Attendees report that Carrey's victory speech was becoming increasingly rambling and had lasted far longer than anticipated. Martin, who was scheduled to present the following prize, reportedly decided to maintain order by entering the stage holding a homemade "Wrap It Up" sign. It is believed that a brief time intended for amusement instead caused stress to endure. According to someone who witnessed what transpired, Jim took it personally. Carrey appeared to take Steve's remark about the awards show's timing as a harsh critique of his performance. The temperature of the room was obviously different. Both men were kind and professional in public after the concert. But Martin, according to many who know him, found Carrey's fast-paced style of comedy and performance to be quite taxing. Working with Steve was like performing arithmetic in a blender, according to a colleague who has worked with both Steve and Jim Carrey. It wasn't that he didn't admire Jim's skill, he did. However, their approaches were so radically dissimilar that they could not cooperate. Individuals who understand Martin's perspective say that Carrey's insane energy wasn't the primary issue, but rather how it affected other individuals. Steve views humor as a dialogue, a give and take that requires as much listening as it does acting, according to a director who has collaborated with Martin. Carey's approach, in his opinion, was more akin to a speech that occupied the entire scene and left no space for other actors. Despite opportunities throughout the years, Martin reportedly refused to work directly with Carey because their philosophies were so different. Several projects that would have combined the two comics were rejected by Martin because he believed their styles would not mesh, according to industry insiders. Steve referred to Jim Carrey as a attention vampire in private conversations, according to a producer who has collaborated with both Steve and Carey. 3. It is Bette Midler who takes the initiative. Something that occurred during a charity event that Steve Martin and Bette Midler co-hosted in the early 1990s is reportedly the source of their tension. Attendees claim that when Midler allegedly took command in a way that Martin didn't appreciate, what was meant to be a pleasant evening of cooperation changed drastically. The gala's director recalled that Steve had meticulously planned the event, collaborating with the writers to create a play that was appropriate for the fundraiser's goal, both humorous and somber. Bette had another idea. She abruptly began singing an unplanned song, completely altering the tone and tempo of the evening. Martin appeared taken aback by this abrupt departure from the established framework, according to many reports. They claim that the biased choices that ruined the meticulously organized event were more upsetting to him than the presentation itself. According to a colleague who has collaborated with Martin on related projects, Steve firmly believes in respecting and cooperating with one another. He claimed to have witnessed someone that evening prioritizing their own urge to take action over the evening's primary objective, which was to generate money for charity. Insiders in the entertainment industry say Martin never worked with Midler again, continuing a pattern of discreetly avoiding people whose performance style he found problematic. The issue reportedly peaked when Martin left the event early, leaving a large donation with a note that, according to a witness, read, "Tell Bette it came from her biggest fan, Silence." Both performers were courteous in their subsequent public appearances. 4. Bill Murray. The unpredictable element. Steve Martin and Bill Murray's alleged altercations demonstrate how their professional relationships have frequently been a conflict between chaos and order. According to industry insiders, the conflict began when Murray allegedly disrupted the meticulously prepared piece in ways that Martin found extremely concerning during a live TV appearance in the 1980s. Steve had meticulously prepared for the presentation, according to a TV producer who witnessed the incident. Bill arrived late, showed no interest in the material being practiced, and immediately began dismantling the planned structure as soon as they went live. According to a number of sources, Murray intentionally disrupted the humorous timing of the scheduled content and made fun of Martin during the performance. It is claimed that this contradicted Martin's precisely balanced approach to humor. Steve respects the issue and the audience, according to a writer who has collaborated with Martin. What Murray accomplished, in his opinion, wasn't simply amazing on the spot. Making a mess of something that individuals had put a lot of effort into was improper. According to reports, the alleged incident had a lasting impact. Martin would not speak to Murray again for nearly a decade, according to people who knew both men. A firm reply from a person who is renowned for being courteous at work, especially when interacting with challenging peers. Steve didn't mind that Bill was attempting to be humorous, according to a director who has worked with both comics. This was due to Murray's apparent belief that his concepts were more significant than the labor that all the other artists had put into creating the sculpture. Of Robin Williams, the improvisational whirlwind. It was claimed that the conflict between Steve Martin and Robin Williams stemmed from a basic difference in their approaches to humor rather than personal animosity. A conflict between Williams's improvisational genius and Martin's meticulously prepared wit. This conceptual divide was most evident when both comedians were prominent guests on television in the early 1990s, according to many who witnessed their interactions. What started off as a performance by two iconic comedians evolved into a lesson in the harmony of disparate approaches. One of the show's directors recalled that Steve, as usual, had meticulously planned. His rehearsed statements, complete with precisely timed leads and punchlines, were ready to go. Robin arrived with just that, Robin, pure energy and spontaneity from the flow of ideas. According to one witness, the scene swiftly devolved into comedy chaos when Williams began to riff, interrupting Martin's prepared material with furious improvisations that threw off the appearance's entire strategy. According to a reporter who was present, Steve was spotted attempting to preserve the layout of his intended project, while Robin was demolishing it all around him. Robin wasn't being cruel. That was the way his genius operated. However, it was extremely distressing for someone like Steve, who views comedy as exact engineering. Martin later compared it like attempting to read poetry while riding a roller coaster, according to people who were aware of what was happening. This is an excellent way to characterize the conflict between his composed demeanor and Williams' frantic energy. This claimed friction is all the more painful, given that Martin was reported to have a great deal of admiration for Williams's ability and inventiveness. It was a fundamental collision of approaches rather than a lack of comprehension. Steve didn't believe Robin was awful in the traditional sense, according to a coworker who knew both guys. Even if the outcomes were occasionally excellent, Williams' unstructured chaos was a type of creative block in Steve's world of meticulously planned humor. Despite opportunities throughout the years, Martin reportedly refused to work directly with Williams due to this philosophical divide. The person who ruins your plans is Goldie Hawn. Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin reportedly got into a brawl in 1992 while working on House Sitter. It was claimed that what should have been a straightforward romantic comedy partnership revealed their essentially different attitudes to acting and business. The film's crew workers claim that Hawn's work habits differed greatly from Martin's, who was renowned for being punctual and well-organized. According to reports, she frequently arrived late for work, disrupting the well-organized filming schedule and causing delays that impacted the entire production. Steve, according to a production assistant who worked on House Sitter, is almost too relevant. Being punctual, in his opinion, demonstrates your respect for other people's time and labor. You could tell Goldie was both morally and practically concerned when he would arrive an hour late, forcing scores of people to wait. According to reports, the conflict extended beyond schedule conflicts and encompassed their divergent perspectives on the matter. According to multiple sources, Hawn frequently improvised conversational topics, which surprised Martin and disrupted the flow of sequences he had meticulously prepared. Steve reads his speech as a musician would read a piece of music. According to a director who has collaborated with Martin on previous projects, he thinks it's important to respect the writer's objectives and locate the most effective moment within them. Goldie's actions were much less premeditated. Steve had to constantly adjust and recalibrate because she changed the lines on the fly. According to those with knowledge of the matter, Martin was most offended when Hawn allegedly made light of his banjo playing, which is a highly personal pastime of his, and has played a significant role in his creative life for many years. According to a colleague who is aware of Martin's music company, Steve doesn't just play the banjo for fun. It's a serious art form that he's spent thousands of hours mastering. Having that dismissed or disregarded would have caused him great pain. Both performers behaved professionally during the film's production and promotional run. Despite the fact that Hawn was still earning money as a co-star, those in the entertainment industry claim that Martin rejected all subsequent opportunities to collaborate with her. According to a producer who has collaborated with both celebrities, Steve allegedly referred to Goldie as a passive-aggressive performance who concealed her rudeness and conceit behind her charm. He believed that she took advantage of her vivacious nature to avoid being caught doing things that a less charismatic performer would have been immediately exposed for. According to reports, this event strengthened Martin's resolve to exclusively collaborate with individuals who shared his professional beliefs, particularly those who valued preparation, deadline observance, and the team-based nature of filmmaking. Charles Grodin, The Deadpan Disaster. According to reports, Steve Martin and Charles Grodin were uneasy about Grodin's contentious interview approach, particularly when Grodin appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, rather than because they spoke directly. According to some present, Grodin became nasty, contemptuous, and deliberately difficult to get along with during the interview, putting on his well-known deadpan, confrontational persona. This was Grodin's popular talk show comedy character, but Martin was reportedly deeply troubled by how it affected the actual individuals. Steve was waiting to go on next backstage. According to a staffer there that evening, he watched the monitor while Charles conducted his customary combative interview with Johnny. Steve perceived things differently than what those viewing at home could have found amusing. He observed that Grodin deliberately disrupted the interview's natural flow, while Johnny made a concerted effort to maintain the show's cadence. Many claim that Martin was particularly displeased with the way that Grodin's performance affected Carson, a professional whom Martin greatly respected. Steve reportedly told a producer after the show that he was offended to witness someone intentionally harming Johnny's reputation for laughs. This was stated by a co-worker who was present. According to reports, Martin was more uncomfortable with the actual discomfort Grodin's aggressive style brought to those who didn't want to be in the bit than he was with the notion of it. According to a writer who has collaborated with Martin, Steve believes that comedies should either be entirely made up or founded on a mutual understanding. Being in this middle ground was hard for Grodin because, out of self-interest, he was deliberately making things difficult with someone who wasn't prepared for them. After witnessing this performance, Martin reportedly referred to Grodin's approach as weaponized awkwardness and voiced his disapproval of comedy that relied on genuine discomfort rather than well-chosen humor. According to a director who is aware of Martin's reaction, Steve reportedly remarked that Grodin appeared dedicated to the role but left a path of rage in his wake. That strategy was incredibly incorrect in my opinion, as someone who really believes that comedy and entertainment should coexist. Although Martin and Grodin never had a lot of business dealings, it is stated that this incident strengthened Martin's resolve to avoid making others feel terrible or unintentionally placing them in embarrassing positions. Steve didn't dislike the deadpan image itself, according to a filmmaker who has collaborated with Martin. The way that character was used made others who hadn't consented to be in the bit feel really uncomfortable. That seemed to him to be right on the border between harsh and humorous. Don Rickles, the roast that went too far. Following a roast-style event in the 1980s, there appears to have been conflict between Steve Martin and the well-known insult comedian Don Rickles. According to reports, Rickles' typically sardonic wit went too far for Martin. According to many who attended, Rickles' show featured gags on Martin's recent financial difficulties and divorce. These jokes touched on more intimate topics and went beyond the typical lighthearted teasing of a comedy roast. One witness claimed, "Don was doing what Don always did, which was insulting everyone in sight." However, his discussion of Steve's private life was incisive, which was not his normal style. You could see that it had struck in a different way than most of Rickles' attacks. Known for his sense of humor and his ability to take a joke, Martin is reported to have maintained his composure during the entire incident. However, many close to him said that the event altered their perspective on the distinction between nasty and hilarious. Steve is adamant that there are boundaries, even in humor, according to a colleague who knows Martin well. He believed that Rickles had deliberately chosen to highlight unpleasant aspects of his life, rather than the lighter subjects that are typically covered in a roast. Industry insiders claim that Martin never publicly chastised Rickles. Rather, he subtly refused to participate in any activities or initiatives that would have placed them in a similar predicament. More than anything else, Steve didn't mind being made fun of. According to a filmmaker who has collaborated with Martin, he's always been okay with that, instead of the humorous subjects that make roast humor work. Some thought Rickles had deliberately chosen the most upsetting subjects. This incident reportedly had an impact on Martin's comedic style, strengthening his belief that comedy should originate from kindness rather than harshness. According to a writer who has collaborated with Martin, Steve once said that Rickles' nasty actions are amusing at times. Although he appreciated Don's contribution to comedy history, he disagreed with a style that seemed to be humorous but may cause emotional harm to others. Burt Reynolds, the prank war escalator. Reynolds was known for his intricate practical pranks and physical humor, which occasionally disrupted the well-organized schedule of his TV appearances. As a result, Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin were reportedly agitated. When they were both guests on The Tonight Show, Martin grew increasingly irritated with Reynolds' strange behavior, according to some who knew them both. Reynolds and Johnny Carson had a reputation for engaging in physical gags that left the set in disarray, frequently including shaving cream, water pistols, and other tricks. According to a producer who collaborated with both men on multiple Tonight Show programs, Steve always conducts extensive research before appearing on television. He treats every concert as a meticulously prepared performance, meticulously prepares his material, and shares his stories at the appropriate intervals. Burt's primary strategy was to hurl a humorous hand grenade into the center of that thoughtfully designed structure. A stage manager who was present said they could see Steve's ire rising as Burt continued to up the physical comedy. One audience member claimed the fight peaked during a panel appearance, where Reynolds' physical antics repeatedly interrupted parts Martin had carefully planned. forcing him to abandon his prepared material as the show descended into what they called kindergarten chaos. That night, that line was definitely crossed between spontaneous fun and purposely getting in the way of someone else's planned work, claimed an individual who was acquainted with Martin. According to them, Martin referred to Reynolds in private as a 12-year-old with a death wish, referring to his almost limitless passion for physical humor regardless of the consequences for other people's prepared content. According to a coworker who knew Martin well, what bothered Steve wasn't that Bert was silly or funny. Rather, it was that his pursuit of attention through physical humor and pranks wounded others who had put a lot of effort into creating something meaningful for the audience. In a tactful attempt to preserve the integrity of his meticulously crafted comedic approach, Martin reportedly requested that Reynolds not be scheduled on panel shows with him due to this philosophical disagreement. He was fun until he wasn't. A talent coordinator who worked with both men claims Steve told Bert. That perfectly captured Steve's feelings regarding Reynolds' entertainment. It was enjoyable at first, but because it didn't respect anyone's boundaries or preparation, it was exhausting by the end.